Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the web conference of earnings results of the third quarter 2022 of ISA CETIP. We have in our web conference Mr. Rui Chamas, CEO of ISA CETIP, along with Carissa Portela Cristel, CFO of ISA CETIP, and other directors of the company. We inform that this video conference is being recorded and will be made available in the IR website of the company, where you can find the presentation as well. I highlight for those that need interpretation, we have the tool available in the globe, say interpretation, placed in the bottom part of the screen. As you select it, select your language of preference, Portuguese or English. For those listening to the conference in English, there is the option of muting original audio, clicking on Mute Original Audio. We highlight that the information contained in this presentation and possible statements that may be made during the conference regarding the business outlook, projection, and operating and financial goals of ISA CETIP are beliefs and assumptions of the management of the company, as well as currently available information. Future and forward-looking considerations are not assurance of performance. They involve risks, uncertainties, and assumptions because they refer to future events and therefore depend on circumstances that may or may not occur. Investors must understand that general economic conditions, market conditions, and other operating factors may affect the future performance of ISA CETIP and conduct to results that materially differ from those expressed in such forward-looking considerations. After the presentation conducted by the company, we're going to have the Q&A session. The questions must be sent through the icon Q&A at the bottom part of your screen. Considering the dynamics, we ask you to identify as you send the questions that will be read out loud by the operator. We'd like to turn over to Mr. Rui Chamas, CEO of the company, so that we can start our presentation. Mr. Chamas, you may proceed, please.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for participating in ISA CETIP's Q3 2022 earnings call. I'm Rui Chamas, I'm the CEO of the company, and joining me today are the executive directors of the company to present the earnings results we released yesterday and update you on the main subjects of ISA CETIP. So let's move to slide 3. The company's third quarter was a time of many accomplishments and results that confirm our strategy focused on sustainable value. On Q3, we've energized 2 more projects. At the end of July, we've energized Interligação Elétrica Paraguaçu, an enterprise that involved introducing a transmission line of 500 kilowatts with 338 kilometers long, connecting the south of the state of Bahia and the north of Minas Gerais. We have a 50% stake in the project in society with Taísa. The enterprise has a total RAP of 143 million, and the result is accounted considering equity equivalents. In early September, we also energized IE Biguaçu, an iconic and unprecedented project in the country, because it is the only one to include transmission lines with air, underwater, and underground stretches, ensuring more security and reliability to the electrical power supply to the metropolitan area of Florianopolis. The project has an RAP of 50 million and is 100% belonging to ISA CETIPs. And it consisted in 57 kilometers of transmission lines and 1 substation in Ratones, in addition to the extension of Biguaçu substation. Also, we have the highlights of our economic and financial results, which will be in which we will be diving more further with our CEO Carissa Cristal. Our EBITDA has grown 31.5% versus Q3 21 and recorded 743.3 million. In the same period, our net profit more than doubled, coming to 386.7 million. In addition to that, we've invested 471 million this quarter $213 million of which were in retrofitting, twice as much as we've invested in Q3 21. This gives us good prospects for growth and future profitability. Our management focused on generating sustainable value as well as our economic and financial results gave us 3 awards. The company once again was listed in the Valor 100 ranking list promoted by Valor Econômico, a newspaper which included now the ESG criteria. We ranked second in the overall list for the electrical power list and number 1 in net revenue performance. We were also one of the 150 companies that most innovate in Brazil according to the Valor Inovação 2022 award organized by Strategy and Valor Econômico newspaper. For another year, we've also integrated the Best and Brightest ranking organized by Exame magazine. In October, we were also acknowledged in the environmental and innovation fronts. We made the top 10 in the electric and renewable energy category in the top 100 open corps organized by 100 open startups. We're also one of the companies that most practice open innovation in Brazil for the 4th consecutive time. And for the 3rd consecutive year, we were awarded the gold seal in our GEE emissions inventory, the highest level in the Brazilian program GHG protocol. Let's move to the next slide where I will talk about the company's growth performance. On the left-hand chart, we see the performance of our investments, and we can see that the pace of investments has increased. These will translate into increased revenue and margins for the company as our greenfield projects are energized. In Q3 2022, growth was by 17.9%. In addition to investments in greenfield projects, we also acquired other projects in auctions promoted by ANEEL. We've invested more and more in updating and expanding the capacity of our assets with retrofitting projects, which are designed to ensure the security of the electrical power service in the assets under our responsibility. In the first 9 months of 2022, we've already invested 538 million in retrofitting, 46% more than in the entire year of 2021. It's important to remember that a concession contract that's renovated brings responsibility and the opportunity to both maintain and update our assets, which we do by investing in retrofitting in addition to the compensation by additional REP, which allow us to reduce our operating and maintenance costs. Let's move on to slide 5 to dive in to our greenfield project. As you know, in the last 6 years, we've acquired 14 new batches in transmission lines. Of those, we've energized 9, 4 of which, Aimorés, Três Lagoas, Paraguaçu, and Biguaçu, were in 2022, with average efficiency of 26% in our capex and average of 7 months earlier delivery. Of those projects still under construction, 2 are at an advanced stage. In addition to that, we have 2 projects that we've acquired in late 2021 in the Triângulo Mineiro region and Minuano, which have entered the more intensive investment stage, resulting in increased investments in our greenfield projects. The projects that matured in the June auction had their contracts signed in October and are now in licensing stage. Let me now turn over to Carissa Portela Cristal, our CFO, who will give us more details about our financial results in Q3 2022. Carissa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Rui. Good morning, everyone. I start my presentation on slide 6. The company's net revenue grew 21.2% in Q3 2020. This event has led to operational event with positive update of RPCO on the RAP of 21-22 cycle, the start of a reinforcement and improvement in the greenfield projects, and the higher value of installments of adjustments. Since additionally, July 2022, we had the partial recomposition of RBSC revenue after the reprofiling of a financial component in 2021. a topic that we have discussed since last year that impacts the tariff cycles of 21-22 and 22-23. Continuous search for efficiency and cost management allowed the PMSO of Q3 22 to decrease 0.4%. This result is explained by the lower personnel costs due to the great dedication of the technical staff to projects and extemporaneous credits of Social Security contributions. In addition, there was a temporal mismatch in the signing of the collective bargaining agreement, which is normally signed in Q3 and in 2022 was signed in October, therefore should have greater impact on Q4 2022. As a result, the EBITDA grew 31.5% in Q3 2022 and totaled 743 million. Profitability also grew and advanced 6.3 percentage points to 80.9%. When analyzing the net income chart in the lower right corner of the screen, we see that in addition to the operating results, the financial results also had an important impact on the profit of the company, with the increase of Selic and deflation of BCA had higher positive impact in the expenses and reduce the impact more, offset the combination with an impact of 33.3 million. I also comment that the result of equity of the company, that is a result of non-consolidated subsidiaries, grew 53 million in the third quarter, impacted mainly by energization of Aimorés and Paraguaçu, in addition to the readjustment of the RAP cycle. As a result, we ended the quarter with a net income of 387 million reais. We're going to move to slide 7, please. On this slide, I have a picture of the company's indebtedness. We ended Q3 with a gross debt of 8 billion and net debt of 7.3 billion. The company continues guided by financial discipline, where all its investments accumulated the first 9 months of the year total 1.4 billion, and we were funded by own cash generation and a slight increase in debt of about 250 million. The increase in debt that I just mentioned also takes into account the progress in macroeconomic indicators, IPCA and CDI, which are the main indices of our debt, contributing to the increase in the debt balance. As a result, the company's leverage ratio measured by the net debt EBITDA ratio was 3.11 times at the end of the third quarter. The Q3 results reinforce the good perspectives that we have in relation to our operating cash generation, which should continue to evolve with the energization both of greenfield projects and reinforcement and improvements, and also with the recomposition of the RBSE receipt. The company continues to constantly assess its capital structure and growth opportunities with the aim of maximizing shareholder value generation. I end my presentation here, and I give the floor back to Rui. Thank you, Carissa. Before concluding our presentation, I would like to address and provide an update on our ESG agenda. Let's move on to slide 8. The Jaguar Parade project is still in progress, and the sculptures that were sponsored by ISA CETIP are now being auctioned. 100% of the amount collected will be to the projects, the Jaguar and its habitat in several Latin American countries. We also invested approximately 1.7 million in the acquisition of mobile equipment to recycle the oil used in our transformers, an essential item for keeping equipment cool and insulating electrical parts and ensuring its full operation. And with the recycling the equipment, we can avoid the disposal of approximately 600,000 liters of oil per month. A major reduction in the environmental impact of our operations. In the social sphere, we continue to evolve and encouraging various initiatives to promote culture. Among the initiatives we have been supporting, and I'd like to highlight, are itinerant and stationary projects that seek to approach people of all age brackets and social groups of the population. We also continue to seek to increase our representation and diversity in our workforce. As a result, in the third quarter, we became part of the Teva Women in Leadership Index, which is the first index in Brazil that selects companies with greater female representation in senior management positions. We may move on to slide 9, where I continue to talk about ESG. As we analyze our main indicators, we see that we continue to make progress in the reduction of SF6, a gas with insulating properties important for our operations, but also with high potential of global warming. In the third quarter alone, the losses decreased by 27.4%. Despite the higher water consumption observed in the Q3, accumulated result for the year also shows a reduction of 4% when compared to 2021. We have intensified the pace of training on anti-corruption policies and procedures. And in September 22, we've reached practically all our employees much earlier than what we did in 2021 when we trained practically all our workforce or our team. We continue with the majority of executive board made up by women, and we see greater balance in the total staff, which currently has a participation of 15% of women. This quarter, we started to disclose new quarterly indicators in our earnings release. They also follow the UN SDG guidelines and can be accessed by the QR code on the side of this slide. Moving on to the next slide, please. To conclude the presentation, I bring on slide 10 a summary of everything that has been presented so far, having as our strategy sustainable value creating, having ESG as core in our strategy. Our company continues with high profitability, strong cash generation, using its resources for growth, with opportunity of projects and improvements, analysis of opportunities of M&A, payment of dividends, sharing value with shareholders, and having in the base of our operations permanent search for operating excellence and financial management that is extremely disciplined, that is materialized in the investment grade the company has in the Fitch list, where we're still listed as AAA in Brazil. Happy to be presenting the results of this third quarter. I thank you all for your interest. And now I turn the floor back to the operator so that we can start a Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Let's now begin our question and answer session. We kindly ask that you identify yourself, make all your questions at once, and wait for the company to respond. Bear in mind that to ask a question, all you have to do is click the Q&A button on the bottom side of your screen and send your question. Our first question comes from Fabio Giotto, an individual investor. Good morning, everyone. Congratulations on the solid results for this quarter. At this point, your leverage is 3.1 points. What's the target for the next quarter when it comes to leverage, and when will this leverage will be drastically reduced? That's Fabio's question. Hello, Fabio. Good morning. This is Carissa Cristal. So, to your question, the company does have 3.1 leverage this time, and you've noticed that it's been declining over time, but the company does not work with a leverage target. What we do is to look at the company's financial health. And we understand that at periods of intense investments, this is a comfortable leverage standard, and we believe that it would be healthy for the company to reach as high as 4.5% of EBITDA in terms of leverage. So we do not have a target, even though the increase in our EBITDA in recent times may lead to a reduction in that sense, depending on what the environment looks like. Thank you for your answer. Our next question, also from Fabio, individual investor, is how will the vesting of shares will look like for the years 2022 and 2023? Hi, Fabio. This is Carissa again. We expect to announce our compensation until the end of 2022, and we will continue to adhere to our practice of paying at least 25% of the regulatory net income. Thank you for your answer, Carissa. Our next question comes from Assis Oliveira, another individual investor. He has two questions. First question: what has been ISA Cetip's RAP to investment ratio in its investments in reinforcements and improvements? Has it been above the average 17% for ANEEL? The second question is, there's still a large number of white people among the company's collaborators, with a high rate among leadership roles, and with little change from last year. What is the company doing, or what it plans to do to improve this ratio, especially in leadership positions? Good morning, Assis. I will be taking your first question about the RAP to CapEx ratio in our investments. Our reinforcement and improvement investments include a range of characteristics. So the RAP to CapEx ratio ranges a lot from 15 to 20%, give or take, of our ANEEL-based CapEx. Now, when we compare that to auction projects, these show higher profitability. And as we've been using as benchmark, these batches have shown profitability of over 2 digits, or of at least 2 digits. So that's these are the benchmarks we're working with in the projects within our portfolio. Yeah, I'd like to take the opportunity and add to the second part of the question. I'm really happy to hear a question in our investors call about the diversity issue within ISA CTIP. Granted, we have been devoting significant effort to bring diversity into the company in such a way that we may reflect our society. Today, we have 25% of employees that self-declare as non-white, against 48% in the entire population. So we are not precisely mirroring society, but in September 2021, we hired 148 people. 28% were non-white. In 2022, of the 270 people we hired, and because of our new projects, we are growing that employee base, and also because of the generational transition with a large number of people retiring, we've already hired 38% of self-declared Black and non-white people. So the fact that we have a more diverse pool of employees has showing its results, and we want our people to really feel included in our company. So thank you for your question. Thank you for your answers. Our next question comes from Gustavo Roberto. He asks, good morning, everyone, and congratulations on the company's performance, as well as the clarity that was given by the company's investor kit. With regard to reinforcements and improvements, I'd like to ask whether the existing licenses, which amount to 5.5 billion, already have a correspondent RAP. Thank you for your attention. I feel like this question was answered by Sylvia previously. Sylvia, if you could go back to this, maybe reinforce what you said. Of course. So our reinforcements and improvements include a range of characteristics. So we have both large projects and small ones. Those of large scale have a preset revenue. It's preset by ANEEL when it auctions the project, and the smaller ones, the rate is decided afterwards. On average, we work with an RP to CapEx ratio between 15 and 20% of the ANEEL benchmark. Now, because we have a very scattered portfolio, we do not monitor that on a project by project basis, so we can't give you an overview in that sense. Yeah, I think that to let everyone on the call know, we have our greenfield projects that we've acquired in auctions, and they have an RAP to CapEx ratio that's well known and which we have communicated. As we said, they've come to two-digit figures. And these have grown significantly, as we shown in during the call, and their profitability far exceeds other greenfield projects that we acquired in auctions. Thank you for those questions, for those answers. Our question comes from André Sampaio, a sell-side analyst. Andre asks, good morning. Could you update us on the removal of substation Centro from the 059 contract? How does the company plan to counter ANEEL's decision? I can take that one, Andre. First of all, the court has not decided whether that will be part of the auction in December, but I think it's also worth mentioning that we've been discussing with the court and ANEEL, because we understand this is a very complex project, and it would make more sense for someone who already knows Centro Station to operate it. Now, should ANEEL and the court decide against us, we or actually decide for us, we would have to look at what the conditions they will have for that, because there's a small share of our project that would have to be considered. We are still analyzing that. We still do not have an answer, but should that project go up for auction, and this is a very complex project, and the indemnization for this small decrease in the 059 contract will be appropriate. Thank you again for your answers. Our next question comes from Amadeo Grandineto, an individual investor. Amadeo asks, is there any future risk in the electric powers industry for companies that have the option of going for solar energy by themselves, and for companies, for self-owned companies, and for residences? And is there a net zero carbon emission project for TRPL?
I see no risk in the adoption of solar energy in transmission. What we have seen is that the renewable energy growth, non-conventional solar, wind, makes it more important and more vital to the system, the interconnection that ensures that when you have any kind of intermittent transmission or intermittent generation, you have access to the energy generated elsewhere. I'd say that the growth of renewable energies, intermittent ones, brings, in fact, an opportunity for energy transmission. There won't be energy transition without very extremely robust transmission. This is what we see for the number of auctions that are expected for the forthcoming years that see the connection of intermittent energy generation with consumer centers? Thank you for the answers. Our next question is from Ms. Ivan dos Santos Torres, individual investors, and his question is, with the growth of solar energy in the near future, can it actually hinder the revenue of the company? We don't realize at all this risk, Ivan. We have very clear regulation that defines how the transmission infrastructure is compensated, and we understand that our business does not depend on the energy volume that we transmit and the type of energy that is the feature of the transmission business, but we do not see such risk. Thank you for the answers. Our next question comes from Antonio Marcos Ermida, and his question is, good morning. Considering more challenging scenario in transmission with more aggressive competition, so is the company thinking about diversification and investing in others? If not, how do you intend to face more aggressive competition? Thank you for the question. I'm Sylvia. I'm going to answer your question. Regarding new businesses, we follow the evolution, the development of our industry. We understand that although there's still a great room for growth in transmission, that we have planning of expansion that expects over 50 billion investment only in the next 2 years. So it is an amount that is quite considerable. And we are attentive to the changes in the energy sector, which is also including energy transmission. So as Rui mentioned, the increase of renewable energy in remote places and the very feature that is decentralized, that is changing the profile of our network, brings new opportunities for growth and not necessarily generation. When we talk about new technologies, we already have a storage project that, even though this that we're doing in Registro has actually been fit into a legal framework as a reinforcement of transition, it is a great learning for us in terms of technology, operations of this asset that we intend to expand as well for other uses according to the development of regulations. A great candidate for the use of batteries is the very capacity reserve auction, which ANEEL has pointed that it will seek greater technological neutrality, considering that last year this kind of auction was reciprocal, and we have studies that point that batteries, depending on the system's needs, and as this need for some hours, up to 4 hours, batteries are quite interesting option. So we have studies towards that. We're getting prepared for this and following and contributing to the development of regulations in this sense. As to competition, we have, yes, faced an environment with great competition, but we start seeing a change in the scenario that we've observed actually in the June auction. Although we've had in certain price mismatches that have been quite high when we compare to previous auctions, you see a change in the profile of competitors. So we're talking about competition between large companies, traditional ones in the industry. In addition, we have a major change in the macroeconomic scenario with the increase in interest rates. So this competition scenario is also something that tends to change over the next few years. Thank you for the answer. Our next question comes from Bruno Ferreira, individual investor. Good morning. Congratulations on your result. Could you give me an update on the projects that involve the use of batteries? Would it be possible to explain to what extent this is a pathway of value generation? What is the time horizon this beneficial effect will be felt? Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Bruno, for your question. As Sylvia mentioned, the company is currently carrying out the largest battery project that will be connected to the basic network in Registro, and the total, all the batteries are there at the plant. They are being installed, and currently what we're doing is connecting everything, or the batteries, and we've started the test phase, and everything is happening according to the plan of the project. The project will be ready to serve next summer in the south coast of São Paulo state. For the second part of your question, Sylvia has already answered part of it. The company is already, or has already had the experience in the battery project. So it has been very good learning experience that makes us have a very good capacity for the future, as Sylvia mentioned, for the future. And we have also possibility of participating in auctions, and we have capacity reserve. Thank you for your answers. Our next question is from Bruno Ricardo, individual investor. 2023 will be important for auctions. What will be ISA priority? Actually having new batches, or trying to invest more in reinforcement and improvements? I think it is, well, thank you, Bruno, for your question. Bruno, I guess I think it is first important to understand the rationale of investments, reinforcement, and improvements. We have assets at hand and the responsibility of keeping them at the best way possible. Since part of our assets, especially in the state of São Paulo, are already at the end of their shelf life, we have to manage the assets, update them, which ends up transforming into responsibility/opportunity. So reinforcements and improvements that are made according to a matrix of criticality, where we have change of equipment happening according to the real need. It's not because we just want to make investments. They are necessary to ensure a good service throughout our network of 128,000 kilometers and the 16 station plants that we have. So this investment comes naturally planned over time. We're assuming that we're going to have 1 billion investment in reinforcement improvements next 5 years. When we analyze this asset management and criticality matrix. So as we've mentioned previously, they are investment that, considering their complexity and granularity, they have a return that is even better than greenfield projects that have another feature. Greenfield projects have the feature of expanding or extending our mid-term of concessions, average term of, so if you get one for 2023, so we have the wrap by 2053, extending the average term of our concessions in our portfolio, in addition to allowing us to put into practice operating synergies that are interesting that we have in our operating network. So these are two types of investments that do not actually compete, each one with their own features keeping the focus of our company in different ways. So we have different teams that make the two types of investment, which is very important, is that regardless of the type of investment, all of them are analyzed in a very disciplined way from the operating and financial standpoint to ensure value generation that we materialize in our results. Thank you for your question. Thank you for the answer. Our next question from Pedro, buy-side analyst of SPX. Thank you for the call, Carissa. If I heard correctly, you've mentioned that the leverage of the company could reach 4.5 times, having a limitation of a covenant of 3.5x, correct? Well, yes, Pedro, you heard it quite well. We understand the company currently at the time of growth sees with great confidence a leverage of up to 4 times net debt EBITDA. And actually, we have contribution and debentures covenant that is most restrictive that we have of 3 times net debt EBITDA, but very much in line with our growth strategy. Recently, we called a GD of this debenture and we restructured the covenants, quite innovative one. And in it, we renegotiated a trigger that is very much geared to our growth strategy, in which in a current normal situation, 3.5. And if the company identifies a growth opportunity that makes sense of an acquisition of a new company, this leverage increases, the covenant increases, and then we have a step of gradual reduction. That's why we say that up to 4.5, we understand it makes great sense at a time of growth of the company, right? And obviously, always looking very strictly at the profitability of projects and value generation for the company. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your answers. Our next question comes from Gustavo Roberto, individual investor. Good morning. Does the company see any regulatory risk with respect to the compensation of retrofitting and improvement projects? Thank you for your question, Gustavo. The regulation on improvements and reinforcements in renewable energy or in companies that have renewable aspects such as ours does, or even in concession contracts that are renewed, we see no willingness from the operator in changing the existing regulation. Thank you for your answer. Our next question comes from Marcus Matos, an individual investor. In the presentation, you showed that there are 2 works which are delayed compared to the deadline provided by ANEEL. What's being done to accelerate its conclusion, and when do you plan to finish it? Thank you for your question, Marcus. Yes, you are correct. As you said, these are the projects in Iguaí and Itaúnas. The Iguaí project is currently at its energization phase for the largest stretch, which will account for 80% of the project. So it's just a matter of days, and the rest should take another year. So the Itaúnas project has also been completed. And right now, we are at the testing stage before energization. So the Itaúnas project is also expected to be ready by in the next few weeks. So about the measures you asked and whether we've taken any, with many of the third-party companies that work with us that were so impacted by the pandemic, we had to reinforce the teams working in these substations with additional outsourced vendors. So with all of that, we will be able to have those projects ready in the next few weeks. Thank you for your answer. Our next question comes from Assis Oliveira, an individual investor. He asks, is there any update from the company about the situation of the revision of the RBSC calculation that's being discussed by Anael? Thank you for your question, Sis. The RBSC issue was defined by Anael in the process that took place in 2020, creating a new way to pay the contribution, which at the time was considered as being shielded by the agency. By mid this year, the topic came to the table for discussion again, and there were special discussions around it in July and August. And after the more intense discussions, Ibrahim, then director of Embraer, departed. So now I see these discussions taking place in a more serene way, with the company being very much present, and also all of our colleagues in the sector that work with RBSC. So the topic is still being discussed. It's been constructive discussion where all of our points have been listened. So we believe that this was an issue that was solved during the readdressing stage. So they are still pondering our arguments. There's no other point to make other than that. Thank you for your answer. Our next question comes from Alberto Zandavalli, an individual investor. He asks, I've read that Anael plans to reduce or to shorten the concession times. Why would that be? Thank you, Alberto. I will answer your question with the next question from Emerson, which is the average time for delivery for the company's concession. That's in our earnings release for all the concession projects that we operate. Today, concession projects in Brazil have a 30-year limit, and I know of no plan to reduce that. However, that shortening of concession periods would not be a work of Anael. It's not the regulating agency, but rather the controlling power that defines that. In our proposition to reform the sector, we have the proposal to actually extend that concession deadline to 35 years. So this is precisely what we expect in terms of the average lifetime value for those pieces of equipment that you use. So I would say that 27 years would be ideal, but more than 35 years, you would need more intense management of your equipment. When you change from 30 to 35, you have an advantage for society in that you have less investment throughout the entire concession period, so you can operate those assets in a better way. Thank you for your answer, Rui. With no further questions, we will now conclude our Q&A session. I will now turn the conference back to Rui Chamas, who will make the company's final remarks. Rui, please, you may proceed. Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone for your interest in our call and for the interactions that you've had with our IR team. And our team is available to continue to provide all of the information about our strategy and how we operate and our plan to generate sustainable value for all our stakeholders. So thank you, have a great day, and let us know if you have any questions.